Welcome to Flâner. So this is a podcast where myself, Dan, Sanjiri, we come together, we talk about things that we've noticed or we've liked or caused us concern over the past week. And so today I've got a topic. So Dan, if you start that 30-minute counter now, that's all we're going to give this topic, no more, no less. And the topic is this. So this week on LinkedIn, I noticed a post by Alistair Cockburn, one of the signatories of the Agile Manifesto. And it was one of these little cards, and I've written one out myself. It was just a little record card, and it said, in Agile, we now have micro-level statistical process control. But at the macro level, we don't know where we're going. And that gave me pause for thought. I'll probably, just in the first instance, tell you about what it made me think. I just reposted it and put +1, I think, in the comments. Not in the comments, in my post. It just said +1. It was just like an affirmation of that statement, that we've got this micro level process control, but at a macro level, it doesn't seem like we've got anything. And I knew that I liked it. I knew that it meant something to me. But it just kept coming back to me. It just kept coming back to me my mind went to it like every day. I think he posted it 5 days ago. And just had this image in my mind, like, if Agile was a person, it just made me think that, like, it felt like what he was saying was similar to, I don't know, some like crisis of I'm at the right age that I'm having now myself, and thinking, if Agile were a person, if it was that description applied to it, it would just be someone who just was trying to get through every day, one day at a time, just keeping breathing and putting one foot in front of the other, because on a macro level, everything's just too mad to comprehend. And that's just what it made me feel. And I think I even sort of attached the prayer that Alcoholics Anonymous, I can't say it, Alcoholics Anonymous.
The Serenity Prayer. Yeah.
Serenity Prayer, So, and I can't even remember what that was, but like, give me the serenity to acknowledge what I can control and what I can't control, and be okay with that. Something along those lines. I fluffed it. But it sort of made me think like that. And so it got to me on a human level. And it sort of personified Agile in that way. And so just today I put that out, and it's had a bit of a response. But I wondered what you chaps thought about the statement as a whole from Alistair, my take on it, and the fact that I also put in there that, like, it could mean anything to anyone. And a lot of people have sort of come back with what it meant to them. So I wondered what it meant to you two. Sanjiri, you go first, is it? You're coming in cold, I think, to this. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I just caught wind of it. I actually just caught wind of it today, I think early this morning. And which is good, because typically in the mornings when I have the most amount of bandwidth to kind of delve into these sometimes philosophical topics or not. Exactly. So, yeah. But no. I think what's funny is, I think that whether you're in Europe, in the States, wherever, I think even in Asia, a buddy of mine who works in Singapore, we're all at this cusp of this conversation. I think it's matured in different forms, depending on the market you work or the people you interact with. So is Agile dead? What is this thing? What is product? How do all these things mix? What's the value of coaches? How do you measure the value of transformations? All these different things. And I think, so I think depending on whether you're a coach, a scrum master, an organizational coach, an executive coach, it'll mean something to you respective to your context. But I think it's a needed conversation. And I think, personally for me, it just means that when you start, and it's happened to me personally, every time I've gone on these missions on the client side and tried to unpack or help with something, right? Whatever my mission is, it's turned into something else. So it's been one door that I've gone through that's unlocked other doors. Now, whether or not I have the ability to walk through that door and carry other people through those doors to solve those other problems that open up, that's another issue. So that's where it goes from the micro thing, which is obviously we know it's not just about methodology, but it's about a lot about process improvement, mindset, all these different things. But it opens up a plethora of other macro topics, which then feel like an overbearing amount of things to handle because of sponsorship, who's in control, whose perception, culture, all these big micro topics, which then just, you feel drowned out, especially if you don't have a coalition, all these different things. So for me, it's just, how do we navigate the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, things that we see and the things we unlock, and how do we walk into those things that we unlock, so that's what it meant for me.
So
Dan,
jump in.
Yeah.
Come on.
Interesting thoughts. I think as I posted on LinkedIn, at first it hit me as a missing the forest for the trees thing, but I saw one of the comment threads within there on your post, Matt, this morning, I think it was. And one of the thoughts was like, oh, well, Agile wasn't supposed to be about, getting to the right place or whatever. Like it wasn't supposed to be about that macro thing. It was supposed to be about these small things. So it wasn't about those things. And I might be, that's how I interpret it anyway. Whether or not that is what was intended in the comment. And I thought, I don't know if that's true. I've had some comments with my friend Jeff Patton, who has way more contact with the Agile manifesto signatories than I do, because I have none, and he knows some of them. And he says, we've had these conversations, and they talk about how, Jeff talks very much about product thinking and about we want to get to the right thing, and we want to make sure that we're building things. We want to be responsible for outcomes, not outputs. And apparently the folks that he talked to say, no, we want to be responsible for the outputs, not the outcomes. Like, you tell us what to build and we'll go build the thing. But we don't want to be on the hook for whether or not the thing was the right thing. And so I think there's some truth to that, but I also think that Agile was sold, and part of what I enjoyed about it, because I have a product background and I was in product, and what I hated was we'd write these giant documents in the olden days of 20 years ago. And you'd hand that document off, and then you'd go through rounds of months of back and forth of reading through the things with the tech team, like line by line, paragraph, period by period, and debating, is the period in the right place? I'm like, these conversations are so silly because they have nothing to do with whether or not I'm getting what I want. And Agile was sold as like, oh, if you have a map, like, yeah, you kind of know that you're going to New York, but as you're going, maybe you want to stop and see the world's biggest ball of twine or whatever the thing is. And so you can vary from it, and you can change your path, and you can get there in a better way. And you ultimately get to what you want, rather than building everything that you wrote on the front end, because you don't necessarily know everything. So I think there is an element of agility that's, we're getting to the right thing. And I think maybe the nuanced debate is in the, are we getting to a better output, or are we getting to a better outcome? Like, are we just going to build the thing and make it the thing better, or are we going to go solve a problem and get to the outcome? And maybe that's the debate, is which one are we on the hook for, or what was Agile trying to solve? And I was not in the room, so I don't know what problem they were trying to solve with the manifesto. I know what it means to me, and it may not mean what they intended.
Yeah, because it's interesting. I mean, one of the things that, and we end up getting into discussion about on the thread that I put out there, was that people agreed it means different things to different people.
Yeah,
like even Alistair putting that out there. So like, there were people on there saying, as we've mentioned, that actually I thought that was the point of Agile, to keep you going day to day, to learn through that forward motion where you feel you want to be. And then there were people saying like, no, actually what he's saying is it's completely lost the fact, or it's remiss in its lack of understanding, or trying to get to the bottom of really what we want to know is where we're going on that macro level. And we're sort of we've sort of just forgotten about that, and that we're not trying to do that. So it's interesting to have sort of like that. There's two polar opposites about that, and there's people saying we should beat ourselves up about that, and there's people saying no, that's what it's all about. And so like someone sort of directed something at me and said about my interpretation of it like being this human thing and it being like just trying to get day through each day. And I'm not really saying we sort of we have reneged on our contract or anything like that, or we have I don't know, not fulfilled on our responsibilities or anything like that. I'm just sort of saying like agile is supposed to help us navigate this big macro level problem, but it's very difficult. And I suppose I was called out on the fact that I voiced that is just it's a projection of some inward conversation I'm having with myself, which I think is probably right. And I think anyone who brings any sort of interpretation that is actually bringing a bit of their own worries, their own anxieties, their own story to this interpretation of this brilliant. Well, again, it's just a few words on a card that seems to have prompted a load of conversations with people's reflection on what their relationship is with agile. But so that's like one thing that we've just had a little conversation about. But then the other thing, like you're saying about like agile, is that we both of you said things about like, you know, what is agile's purpose? What was it supposed to do? What were the signatories thinking about it? And Sanjiri, you mentioned about agile, you know, the conversation about agile being dead. I suppose I wonder whether this post by Alistair is really saying that it hasn't fulfilled on it, and should it be cast to one side now, or is this where it should go to now fulfill upon that promise that has not been fulfilled upon? What do you think? So what do you think about agile?
I mean, I want to pause to notice, like, this is to me part of what I loved about agile when I first heard about it, is that we think that writing these giant books of, you know, 300 or 400 page requirements documents are clear. How many words did Alistair post? Right. I mean, and we are sitting here, we're going to have a 30-minute conversation about what he meant in those few words. Point being, like we can sit here and like everybody has their own interpretations and they see it in a different way, and it means something different to different people. The same thing is true as requirements. And that's part of what I liked about agile to begin with, is like, okay, rather than writing a bunch of stuff on paper and thinking that we're clear, let's actually do stuff and verify that we're clear, but let's do it in small amounts so that as we're doing it, we know that we're clear because we can see the end result. And not only will we find out that we weren't clear, we'll also find out we didn't want what we wanted. It's sort of a tangent, I know, but I just noticed it as sort of a meta thing of this conversation when we're having so much conversation about these few words, that I think that that's an important element.
I mean, I think, you know, we've all heard of the stories of, you know, and I hate that 2001 has become such a bookmark, but it is an important date because it is when the signatories, you know, all gathered in Utah and came up with this sort of, you know, this movement and push it out there. But I mean, we all know that a lot of it was great repackaging, because a lot of these thoughts and principles and convictions had been used, you know, from my perception, even way back since ancient Egypt. I think that if there's no iterative process, the ancient Egyptians wouldn't have been able to build the Great Pyramids, right? And so the Toyota system, you know, production system, you know, all these lean management principles, empirical proof from the Enlightenment period. So I think all these different movements were packaged in a way. I think the intention or the burning platform in 2001 was the .com bubble which burst, and the amount of failed projects or initiatives or whatever in IT, right? Right after the cups where IT, the technology was taken off, was becoming much more important. And, you know, how do we decrease this failure rate? And I think it's become something more than that, which is how Agile has seeped into other things beyond IT, into finance, into just the organization as a whole. So two things come to mind for me, which is humility and uncertainty. How do we deal with those two, right? I think, you know, oftentimes we say that, you know, agile is a way, it's a culture, it's an approach to helping you deal with an uncertain VUCA environment and certain environment, changing environment. And I think that, you know, but that becomes something that's missed upon us as we deal with this question where we have uncertainty around what is this macro meta thing that this thing was brought about and has helped us and unlocked all these conversations. So I think we have to be okay, as you often say, you know, Matt and Dan, when you come out here, we often talk about how, you know, just one step at a time, just being comfortable with having these conversations and not having to have, right? So I think, I don't think there's a lost promise on Agile. I think Agile oftentimes gets introduced and it opens up a whole lot of cans of worms. Now, what you decide to do with those cans of worms is a different story. That has nothing to do with Agile or Lean or all these different things. It's your own ethos on your approach, on how you solve problems, how you deal with uncertainty, the level of humility you have in doing that. So I think that's what we're dealing with right now. You know, you can relate that to the climate.
I think what you're like talking about there is also, it reminds me of something I was thinking the other day. That so like Agile is the poster child, isn't it, of the management methodology in the digital age, right? And like you say, like there's been other management methodologies that have been around for, you know, for quite a long periods of time. Let's say like through the other industrial revolutions and so on. Each new industrial revolution has brought forward some form of complicated scaling technique that seeks to make things more efficient, or, you know, or return a bigger investment and all that sort of stuff from a technology that's been discovered that sort of makes more production and output more easily attained by just throwing money and investment at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of got to this period where like digital has massively democratized technology. So, you know, everyone's got a highly powerful computer in their pocket, which connects them to lots and lots of different things and allows them to do things like this, you know, just record themselves and put themselves out there for little things. And so what comes with that is the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity that you speak of, and everything sort of goes mad, and everyone's got the ability to talk about it. And I think like this uncertainty is this thing that's impressed upon us all. Like we're all probably much more uncertain now. There's been a loss of deference, so we don't look as often to other people to tell us what we should be doing, because we have lost trust in a lot of the authorities that tell us what we should be doing. And the massive thing about Agile for me, I think, is that it was born out of that era. And it's one of it, when I think about management methodologies, it's trying to help us help us reconcile ourselves to that uncertainty. It doesn't tell us that don't worry, things are going to be certain, like some other management methodologies. You know, here's how we create certainty out of this. Here's how we determine what's going to happen in the future. Now we're just talking about, well, probabilistically it might happen, but don't worry if it doesn't. Give yourself other options and all that sort of stuff. But it's really difficult for us to move away from that feeling of, well, I just crave certainty. And so I always feel like Agile's going to get a kicking in. It's going to get slings and arrows. It's going to get stones thrown at it, because it's not giving us that thing that we just crave. It's trying to get us to stop craving it. It's trying to get the monkey off our back, sort of thing. It's trying to, you know, stop us chasing that dragon. And
well, this goes to, I was thinking about this, Matt, in the shower. Great place for thinking. And you know, I was thinking about how, you know, people, you know, you'll hear people say, oh, well, you make me uncomfortable, or that thing makes me uncomfortable, or, this idea of uncomfortability. And when you're talking about getting the monkey off the back and becoming comfortable, I actually think I was likening it to going and working out. Like if you go and work out, you go for your first time and you've not been in a while, the next day you're going to be sore, right? You're going to feel bad. You're going to feel uncomfortable. Now, as someone who doesn't do it very often, you might be like, oh God, that was awful. I should not do that again. And then you start doing lighter workouts and you go to the gym and you do things that like you don't feel sore, but you're not actually growing. Whereas professional bodybuilders, they're sore all the time and they just that's normal for them, right? So what we might define as uncomfortable, they're like, well, that's normal. I'm sore. And that tells me that I did a good, that tells me I had a good lift. Like I'm sore. I wear it as a badge of honor. And so we need to get to the point where like, oh yeah, I feel uncomfortable. And that's not only is that okay, that's normal, that's good. It means I'm going in the right direction. I need to feel uncomfortable. As opposed to I need to protect myself so I don't feel uncomfortable. Well, I think it's Susan David who says in one of her TED Talks, discomfort is the price of admission, right? It's the price of admission to being human.
Yeah.
Is that we live in a state of discomfort, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, go tell that to, and obviously I think ultimately what I love most around these conversations is sort of the cultural nuances, right? We're having this as as somebody that's based in the UK, me in France, and you in the States. And I think we've all seen just that conversation around discomfort. What does discomfort mean? Obviously there's the American way, which is, hey, practice hard, pain is good, all these things, right? That are very, centered around, work hard, play hard, these things. In Europe, it's a different thing, man. You go to India or Asia or even Africa, which is a totally different cultural setup, and you have the sort of ethos of these companies or these organizations is different. So you go and tell them, hey, discomfort is good. They're going to look at you like, what are you talking about? So I think that's ultimately what I think is the beautiful thing around how, like you guys said, going back to what it means for each and everyone. And I think within that, you have to find your way. And then along the way, becomes topic of transformation, all these things. And obviously more and more conversations are being had around understanding principles and convictions other than just the methodology, right? And then so that helps navigate some of that complexity, right? But I think it means something different to everybody, and completely. Some of it is profit for some people it's cultural, other people it's just, hey, let me take one step at a time. I'm enjoying this journey. So, and if you try to control that, that's where the whole macro trying to align a herd of complex.
So
Yeah.
so does that then align with the notion that, again, second guessing Alistair now, aren't we? To align with the notion that he's not saying we have to know where we're going. I mean, he might be saying we should be knowing where we're going, and that's a different question that I do want to ask us. But are we saying that actually we don't need to know where we're going? That's agile. But I mean, some people will probably say, like, probably not, in like Dan was talking about the illustrious Mr. Patton earlier, about like from a product and value perspective, actually we want people to be aligned around what direction we're going in. We should know where. Is he saying we should know where we're going in, and it's disappointing that we're not? We don't.
I'll let you take. I'm going to let you take this down real quick, but just I equate it to look at like this, the GAFA, Facebook, Amazon, all these different things. If you look at just Facebook, how long did the platform really take to build a critical level of adoption throughout the world, where you had a critical mass of people throughout the world having a basic understanding of some of the 4 or 5 core features of that application, right? And then, once you got to that, it took on a totally different meaning for everybody, and it became synonymous, right, with posting pictures, getting reactions, speaking to your family, connecting with people, et cetera. I think sometimes we sort of undermine the level of maturity around Agile. You still go into organizations who have no clue what Agile means or what it is, and you're still just having 101 classes around Agile and all these different concepts and what they mean and what a transformation is, et cetera. So I think sometimes us who live in the space on a day-to-day basis, have lived in this space on a day-to-day basis, eat, breathe, shower with Agile. We forget that a lot of people are still on that path to discovery around what this means and all the different things it can unlock. So I think and sometimes that inner core of early adopters becomes very impatient with the rest of the world who have completely different, live in a different parallel world with different objectives, who are, polluted or, inspired by other things, or, you know what I mean? So I think that's something to be made. That's why I've mentioned that the humility part is really, quintessential for me. What do you
I mean,
think?
how can we expect that people who don't live and breathe it every day have a cohesive and cogent view of what it means when, if you put three of us in a room, you're going to have a knock 'em out, drag 'em out fight over what it means to begin with among just those three people, right? I mean, the old joke, if you got 5 Agile coaches in a room, you got at least 10 opinions. I mean, like, there's just so many different opinions about what does it mean and what are we aiming for. Anyway, I think that's why. So I think there's a piece of that, and I also think to what you said, Sanjiri, I was on a call this morning with a group of fellow. I hate the word agilist these days because I don't want to describe them. They're just we're of the same mind, right? We're people of the same mind, and we share similar values. And I said, we are. Well, that's true. We don't always, but we're also steeped in it, and we all are with, like, we're seeing this all the time. And when we have conversations among ourselves, like, there's a lot of stuff that we know and we assume, and we have different conversations, but you go have it with people who haven't steeped themselves in it, and it just seems really out there. It seems really wacky and crazy. And like, who are these weirdos that are talking about I just want to get work done. Why are they talking about all this other stuff?
Well, I'll tell you what, we're coming up to the last 3 minutes. So we said that we were going to do the last 3 minutes would be a minute each, summing something up, God knows what, but I'll let you decide. So what I want to then ask you is, so to that last point of Alistair's, we don't know where we're going. And we've said we've had different descriptions of why that's good or why that's bad and why that will happen. But where do you think Agile is going? I want you to tell me, and you said people will have different interpretations of this, but I want you to tell me where you would like Agile to go. Dan, you start.
Yeah, I see there's a couple different paths. So one is I see people rebranding and talking about, quote, adaptive and adaptability. Like, everyone is picking, it's like it's the same stuff with a different name. And I'm like, that is not going to cut it. Where I really do see some forward motion and see some people who I see visionaries talking about this is, and I'm on this bandwagon, obviously, so I have an angle here, potentially, is people, right? We're really talking about people. We're talking about, like, how people relate to one another, how they interact. The work gets done through people. And if we don't focus on that, like, I think that is really the critical piece for agility, small a agility, is that we as people are better able to interact with one another.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Sanjiri, go. Got a minute.
Well, I think this is a conversation that's just starting, and it's going to keep ballooning. It's going to take on different forms because there's the human element of it is, there are humans involved in the conversation who want to profit from it, who profit off of this conversation, who make a living out of it. There's organizations who have hope in it. So it's going to take on different forms, and it's going to continue evolving. If you go in the African space, it's very much a conversation just getting kickstarted. Now you add on product and all these different things. You go in the States, it's at another level of maturity. So I think it's going to keep on evolving. But, ultimately what I found, at least from a personal standpoint, what I share with people is, if you don't want to get flooded with going into the macro level, when you're just trying to solve this little bit and you've opened all these different doors and it becomes too much to bear, just help people identify the 2, 3, 4 problems that you'd like to help them solve, identify them, and then figure out a way, focus on those problems and how you get there. And Agile may come into the, space, or it may not be, tangible for you to bring it in, but focus on just how you get to where you are to the problem you want to solve. That's
Right, you give me 20 seconds. So in 20 seconds, where do I want Agile to go? What, we don't even know where we're going. So I want us to go to the places that need us the most, and I don't think that's fintech. It's probably edtech. I want us to solve the world's wicked problems. I want us to stop mining heavy materials that came out of stars and producing more wearables. And I've gone over time, more wearables that end up in landfill. I think if any people in this world can solve the world's problems, it is teams of agile people with agile thinking. I don't know, using Scrum, using Kanban, using all of those things, but getting together and running experiments, which is what we do really, really well, and driving ourselves to do better for the rest of the world. I don't want to see another mortgage deal. I don't want to see another current account. I don't want to see more oil being taken out of the earth. I want to see us helping people have better lives. And that was a minute, but we ran over. Apologies. So that was it. That was this episode. Thank you, Alistair Cockburn, for giving us the topic, and everyone else who joined in the conversation. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sanjiri. And let's get together in a week and have another one of these.
And cut.